You know what? I did pick out Ryan Fitzmagic. So how you feel about it?
Hey,
Hey, you around
I'm
18
not
years.
surprised how long you've been in the league and so many teams. So I'm not surprised.
Yeah. I picked him off, but I picked off a younger version of Ryan. This older version of Ryan actually is pretty damn good, and he can flat out play. Don't forget the guy got benched in Miami for winning too much. So that tells you a lot about him and where he's at. And he's in the top, hey, believe this or not, he's in the top 5, top 6 in QBR and completions in the last 3 years of his career. He's got better. It's like wine. He's getting better. But I got something that I feel, as much as I know Ryan is going to help us win and he's going to be that guy, you know, sometimes in football, it's all about the story. I feel a Kurt Warner type story happening with Tyler Heineke. I just feel if Ryan Fitzmagic missed just 1 or 2 games, he'll never get his job back again. I feel that Tyler Heineke would get in there and really become Kurt Warner of the Washington football team. Yes, the guy that comes out of nowhere that was bagging groceries that turns into a Hall of Famer. I gotta feel it.
How does that OG title make you feel to know that you had made an imprint into this fan base and things like that?
Oh, that's what it make you feel. Oh, you used to look at the guys like B. Mitch and Doc Walker, you Sonny Jurgensen's, and you like, man, they played and they was a part of historic teams, and all of a sudden, we didn't have any history. I think we brought a different energy to the city, and just having the luxury of playing with Sean T and playing with Santana, myself, Marcus, Chris Samuel. I think the guys, Smoot, those guys that was in that community meant so much. Even the unsung heroes, the Mike Sellers, the Rock Cartwrights, the Kerry Campbells, the list goes on. The people that was just embedded in the community and that meant well or did well. And then you have those guys that didn't do shit there that the community can't stand. So everybody came in, the guys that during my term, the LeVar Harrisons of the world.
Boom. Here we go. Here we go. Welcome back to another episode of the Trap or Die podcast, provided to you by 214 Media. I'm your host, Marty Mual, Coach Mual, Hen Dog Mual, all that good stuff. AJ's in that thing. Hold on, let me go remove this and add him to the all right, now there we go. All right, so there we go. I am your host, Marty Mual. AJ just checked in. Dre is on the way. Let's go ahead and get through the administrative items right quick. In whichever way you are listening, always be sure to rate, review, like the show. If you are new to the Trap or Dive podcast, make sure you are following on Twitch if you are not, or subscribed on YouTube if you are not. Help grow the show. It's much appreciated. One reminder, if you all haven't been told or run on the spaces yesterday or anything like that, Trap or Dive will be live at FedEx Field this Thursday at the draft party. Hold on, here's Dre right now. Let me add him to the chat. We will be live at the draft party. So we will have an extra stream this week to chop it up. Hopefully get some good guests lined up when we do touch down at the stadium with even more draft coverage. All right, fellas. AJ and Dre is here. Fellas, how y'all doing, man? Welcome to the half hour early stream, I guess. Today. How y'all feeling?
Shit, man, I'm great. It's draft week. It's always like one of my favorite times of year, when the only time of year we not competing for anything. I ain't got to worry about a loss. I can just pretend like we a competent football franchise around this time of year. So this is my favorite time of year.
Yeah, man, I'm cool, man. Just trying to get the energy all the way back. That's it, man.
Yeah. Hey, so let me ask y'all though, before we get into the agenda, are y'all not like? There's one thing, like, you all, for those who don't know, I've started taking the scouting and all that stuff a little bit more serious, just trying to up my resume on my side. But the more I dive into that, the more I realize how serious draft Twitter is. I never really dived into it. I've always been surface level because I watch football. I just knew players, but I never really cared to even put opinions out there on certain players until I started watching these motherfuckers. And I don't know how y'all feel, but do y'all feel like there's this oversaturated conversations surrounding all of these draft prospects coming out?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because I mean, you got to think about the time lapse. Like, you have no football, so the closest thing you get to the football is the combine, free agency, and then the drafts. Like, so after the Super Bowl is over, that's typically the last week of January, first week of February. Now you just pretty much like holding on, just trying to see who your team might possibly get. If you win the Super Bowl, you're not really thinking about the draft too much. You just like, hey, whoever's there at pick 32 or whatever is who we get. But if you're in the mix of things, you got a top 10 pick, a top 15 pick, you hoping that you get a game changer to possibly help your team get pushed to the next level. So it just allows people to create so many different narratives, options, do all these mock drafts, and rumor mill starts up, and all type of shit happens. And you even have it happen on the professional level where scouts are moving guys that they projected second day to top 10 picks, or guys that they projected end of the round have now moved up to possible, like Trayvon Walker. He went from being a late first round pick, early second round pick, to now possibly being 1 or 2 in the draft overall. So it's just like, it's so much time in between. It just allows these people to overanalyze and just overthink everything.
Well, yeah, AJ's right. Like, I mean, I listen to people every year, especially the regular Joes on Twitter. These guys are talking about dudes getting skinny in the hole, or they ain't coming out of breaks fast enough or faster than this guy. So it's interesting to see everyone so engaged in this, but it's every year. I mean, football fans are diehard when it comes to the draft. I think the NFL draft is like probably the biggest sports draft out of all the professional major sports. I mean, the NFL draft is major. I mean, I remember watching it as a kid. It was on Thursday. It was on Saturday and Sunday. It would be on Saturday for 10 hours. And I would watch all 10 hours of that draft on Saturday, then get right back up on Sunday and watch 6 hours more than draft on Sunday. So, I mean, as football fans, just like AJ said, you have that gap from the Super Bowl to the draft, which is pretty, significant. I mean, the season from the Super Bowl gap is significant in itself, but the draft is like giving you something. It's like letting you know, it's like that midway point to say we're almost there. We're coming up on this season. We're at the halfway point. So it's exciting. And it's also, for me, I love like just, going through the drafts. Like, I like, me being a football connoisseur, I love like going and watching old football videos. Like, I watched the 1992 draft, and it's just so crazy to see how, it's crazy how, the coverage of those drafts and, how everything changes. You get to see the trends. Like, there was running backs that weren't going high enough in this 1992 draft. And obviously this is a different time. And the analysts on there are like, when is a running back going to go? Teams are passing up on these great running backs. And nowadays it's like, you're lucky to see a running back go in the first round, So, and in those days too, it was funny watching it because guys like Jerry Jones and them, like you had to pretty much have a contract in place with these guys already before you draft them, which is not the case now because obviously you have a rookie wage scale. But it's just fun. Like, draft time is fun. Yeah. This the whole experience, like we all get amped for it. I like seeing people engaging and talking about it. It's here. It's like I said, it's the halfway point.
Absolutely. I'm a fan too. I think sometimes I think to AJ's when he talked about it, sometimes like when you start over analyzing, and I think that's the part of the process that we're in now. Like the last 2 weeks, you're just going to see a lot of the same things that's probably been around for a number of weeks at this point. But either way, good talk is, talk is talk. All talk is good talk in any rate, regardless. So, fellas, on the agenda and everybody listening, we got a couple things planned, simple things. Ranking our top 5 prospects, receiver prospects in the draft, given the news that Drake London is reportedly the number 1 receiver on Washington's board. And then if we have enough time, I'll be candid with everybody. I got a celebration to attend this evening, so that's kind of why we're starting at 6:30. So if we do have time, we'll do it today. Otherwise, we'll save it for the Thursday event. But ideal plans for the draft, definitely get the gas opinion on this. But in terms of us, we may have to say this, but what are our plan A's, plan B's, plan C's for the draft? What are our ideal outcomes for round 1 and 2 for the draft for Washington Commanders? Lastly, Mitch Tischler, he's going to be joining us shortly. If you don't know Mitch, he works for NBC Sports Washington and covers the Commanders for the Washington Football Talk podcast. So we'll have Daron Payne conversations and how things essentially ultimately circle back to Carson Wentz. And then obviously some draft talk and mock draft selections for the Commanders. Fellas, what's going on? Alex, what's going on, Hawk? Appreciate y'all checking in. So speaking of top 5, we'll get into our top 5 right quick. I'll ask you all off the back. Alex asked us, is Alec Pierce a top 5 receiver prospect? My short answer is no, and I'm going to list my 5 for you, Alex, but I'll hand this to you all. The wide receiver out of Cincinnati, for those who may not know, 6'3"-ish.
Who is that? No, let me stop.
6'3"-ish, I think 215, 217, around that same range, and runs like a 4.3 40. That's the big number that everybody opens their eyes up at. But what do you all think about Alec Pierce, if y'all have an opinion?
I can say Alec Pierce isn't in my top 5. This is a good wide receiver draft. Honestly, there's about 10 guys in this draft right now that I can think of.
And Jay, go ahead and get into your 5 too, by the way.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and get into my 5. But I was just going to say Alec Pierce, in a probably a normal receiver draft, maybe a couple of years ago, he's a top 7 wide receiver in a draft or top 6 wide receiver. But this year is just so deep. So with that said, I'm going with my top 5, and Garrett Wilson makes my number 1. He's my number 1 receiver on the board. Number 2, I have Drake London. Drake London is number 2 on my board. And number 3, now this would obviously be different if his injury wasn't a thing, but Jamison Williams is right there at number 3. He would be my number 1 on the board if he was readily available right away. Okay. Number 4, Chris Olave. Chris Olave is my number 4 receiver out of Ohio State.
He in your top 5, bro?
He in my top. He's in my top. Look, he wouldn't be my pick at 11. I don't think I would take him that high, but he's in my top 5 in this draft. And number 5 is Johan Dotson, who I think AJ should like. If AJ likes Jamison Williams, he should like Johan Dotson. Like, that's a guy I would love to actually, if we were to trade down, or maybe if he was to slide to number 47, he's a guy, he's big play potential. He could play punt returner. We don't really have one of those right now. So he'd be a guy that can kind of plug and play, anywhere in the field. So that's my top 5.
Yeah, I definitely like Dotson. I've been liking him for some time, or whatever. But as far as for this particular team, at the 11th pick, I don't like. But yeah, Alec Pierce is not in my top 5. That's not to say that he can't be a good wide receiver. He kind of reminds me like of Cole Beasley. I'm just saying that for the hell of it. You know how to be comparing all Caucasian players to other Caucasian players.
Yeah. The ultimate compliment would have been that boy Cooper.
Nah, definitely can't do that. But yeah, yeah, I think Alec Pierce is definitely gonna have potential to be a contributor for some team. Probably end up going to the Packers or the Patriots. Seems like, type of player that would go to one of those systems. But overall for me, man, my wide receiver 1 has always been Jameson Williams. I don't care about the injury at all. I'm comfortable with taking him. Shoot, if I had a top 10 pick, I'd take him. At the end of the day, Alabama wide receivers have not failed you in the NFL over the last couple years or so. You have Amari Cooper, you have Judy, you have Devontae Smith and Jalen Waddle and other guys that have come out of that system that have succeeded on the next level because they pretty much are running an NFL-style offense. Number 2 for me would be Garrett Wilson. Number 3 would then be Drake London. Number 4 for me would be Chris Olave. And number 5 would be Dotson. Those are my guys. I'm probably even at 5, probably tied with Dotson and and Burks. I think Burks could be a major player for certain teams, just not this particular team that we're talking about, the Commanders. But I think he could be a vital tool to certain teams, let's say like the Arizona Cardinals, Kansas City Chiefs, the Packers.
San Fran could use him.
Yeah,
He would fit in that offense.
Yeah, San Fran could use him as well. So, that's my ranking right now as far as the wide receiver prospects.
So Alex mentioned in the chat that Chris Sims had Allen as his third, specifically mentioning that he felt that Pierce had the best release from the line of scrimmage of all prospects. And one of the things that I would ask, I would love to get Chris Sims on just off the strength of that type of analysis, because I don't know. I mean, you're not always facing the same coverage concepts at the line. So if he's talking about he has best releases against, a ton of different coverage concepts, and I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about Alec Pierce, who I think right now is projected like around the third round selection or something like that. But for me, we're all in the same range, to be honest with y'all. We're all in the same range. My number one is Jamison Williams. First and foremost, elite speed. You can't ignore that. A good playmaker after the catch and a developed route runner. I don't know. See, like I heard, who was it? Golick. Golick brought up a good point today. I heard him on the radio, and he was mentioning that, and AJ, you just mentioned it too. Those Alabama guys have, I need to know who their wide receiver coach is, because like their the technical aspects of route running, like they're tactical and and how they do things. They're very smart and aware of how a stem is supposed to go and how you set up defenders based on the leverage that you have. Like it's impressive to see, and it's a continuance in draft classes. Like you see this in almost every single receiver that comes out of Alabama in recent years. It's impressive. So for Jamison Williams, given that he has that elite speed, he's a playmaker after the catch and a developed route runner, I have to give him that number one nod, even dealing with the play strength concerns. And AJ, when we had our spaces yesterday, it was something that I brought up to Mark Bullock, and just my general concern about play strength with receivers. It's a common thing throughout some of the best receivers in this class, is the play strength concerns. It's not really many in terms of the top prospects. I haven't dug deep, but it's not really many in terms of the top prospects that has that full composite that you want from a receiver. Drake London is good with play strength, but he lacks something in other areas. Like he lacks that foot speed, right? So for Jameson, given that he has the ability to do a ton of other things, despite the play strength and him having to be a little bit better against the press, and being a little bit more physical at the catch point, I'm perfectly fine with having him as my number one, injury aside, and already knowing that he has an ACL injury versus ACL, MCL, and all the other L's. It's only an ACL, so you can kind of count on him bouncing back without having a significant recovery time. Like he's already projected to come back around training camp. Like, yeah, and I mean, that's perfectly fine with me.
And I mean, I don't think it's on his social media, but the other night I sent you guys a video. It was a lengthy video. It was about 3 minutes of him doing field drills, already running, already doing ladder drills, everything. So I'm not really concerned about the ACL. I know that he'll be back and ready to return to form by probably August. Like I'm not even concerned about him missing any games. I just feel like, you can't, in football, those type of things are going to happen. Like you can't get away from that. Let's think about a couple years ago, Antonio Cromartie was the best corner out of that draft, but people were scared to take him because of the limited amount of games that he did play at Florida State, and he had an ACL injury. But he ended up being one of the better defenders in that whole draft class.
And a special teams demon.
Yeah, you just never know what could happen. Like a guy, you could draft a guy this week, and next week, rookie minicamp, he could get hurt. So, I mean, it's just the game of football, unfortunately. But it's just like you got to also think long-term with these draft picks. You can't just think short-term, like, I just need a guy for September through the first week of January. You got to think longer term. Like, what happens if even this coaching staff leaves? Like, can I still utilize this guy? Because if you're focused on the injuries, you take a guy like Drake London, where we don't even know what he runs 40-wise, but we already suspect that it's not going to be the best time. If he tears the ACL, what? Now you just want to get rid of him? Like, it's just kind of those type of things that you got to be mindful of when you think about the injury component.
Yeah, I agree, but it's also important to know, while you're talking to us and you're talking to the people obviously that's listening, it's important to know you got to kind of separate the two, because you brought up a good point, right? But you got to also put yourself in the shoes of how the coach is going to think. You said, what if the coaches ain't here for X amount of years? Them coaches is thinking about the times they're going to be here. So while I, like me and you, have Jameson number one, they may have Jameson number one, but they probably not going to be. They may not be willing. I'm not going to say probably not. They may not be willing to risk that number 11 for Jameson. So I think that's the only counter to that is that them boys may not be trying to risk, drafting a guy who may not be ready throughout the entire offseason up until training camp. So that's that. But he still is my number one. My number two is Garrett Wilson. Similar to Jameson, elite speed, but he's an explosive athlete with great competitive toughness. I guess elite competitive toughness at the catch point. You're seeing him jump out the gym for catches. You're seeing him at the break point explode past defenders and making plays. You're seeing him at the catch point, even on his bubble screens and at the line of scrimmage, exploding and trying to make a play. He's trying to score every single time he gets the ball. He's an explosive playmaker at the catch point and after the catch as well. So I respect what he does from a whole standpoint of his game, but also knowing that he has room to develop. And I think that's important too when you talk about these younger guys, especially when we get into Drake London, because I think he's only 20 as well. But Garrett Wilson is young, and when you talk about his counterpart in Chris Alabe, I'll get to him shortly, but you kind of notice the differences in their game and what you'll be willing to take from one receiver versus the other. So for me, Garrett Wilson is number two. Number three is Drake London. Drake London is my third receiver. He's been my third receiver for a while. A lot of people who follow me on Twitter, or even know like the arguments that I go back and forth with people on Drake London, it's more so about the idea of Drake London versus where I have him ranked. He's not my number one receiver coming out of this draft. He never has been, but he is my top. He is in my top three, and I think that's a testament to Jameson, Garrett, and Drake, because I think all three of them are good, and all three of them are can't miss. Wherever they land, they're going to be productive. All of them are going to be good. And for Drake London, while he has that above average speed, he's not going to blow past you for a 75-yard deep bomb, but he is an experienced route runner. He has that good play strength where he can separate at the last second. He can make plays at the catch point that others can't. So if you have that contested ability, you can see him subtly separate at the last second. That makes you say, or don't even make you realize like where it came from. Like you saw him covered and all of a sudden he's not covered. Like that's the type of thing that you get from Drake London that others won't be able to provide you in terms of if there's a contested moment. So you have to take these type of things into an account. And for me, when you're talking about separating, when you're talking about the ability to dot him up from a mental standpoint, I love it. But he's also elite playmaker at the catch point. That's what everybody knows about him. He's an elite playmaker at the catch point, but also very good in terms of his yak. So I love that for him. And I'm willing to deal with those foot speed issues. Number 4, Johan Dotson out of Penn State. To Dre's point when he mentioned Johan, similar to Jameson, but also similar to Chris Alabe. There's now 2 things. Dotson, he's not going to blow you away with 4.3 40 speed, but what you don't see in terms of his 40 time, you see that speed and that explosion on film. You see a guy who is, when he's running his post routes, when he's running his post corners, when he's running those intermediate to deep routes, he has that explosiveness, that change of direction that you want from a receiver who's capable of running those things. And he has that explosion where it's like when that ball is in the air, he's going to go get it. Like that's where the speed comes in, and he starts separating from the defenders at that point. So while he runs that 4.47 or whatever it is, he's faster than the 4.47 when the ball is in the air. So I love that part about Johan Dotson. Clearly, he's a catch magnet. His catch radius is incredible. So I love that for Jahan Dotson. He is my number 4 guy. And number 5 is Chris Alabe. I'm not necessarily a huge fan with Alabe compared to others. I think, honestly, the 1 through 3 are the difference makers, and the separation between 3 and 4 is where things happen, and 3 and 5 is where things happen for me. So Jahan Dotson and Chris Alabe are on another tier, while Jameson, Garrett, and Drake London are on the same tier within their own respective rights. So Chris Alabe, for me, elite concentration, like the body control at the catch point, like him making these unbelievable acrobatic catches. Like you'll get that all the time with Chris Alabe, and you love it. And obviously the elite speed, like it's hard to really sit here and be laxed in coverage against a guy like that because he'll just blow past you. But some of the concerns that I had and why I say that they're separate from that tier 1 to tier 2, 2 things. One has nothing to do with Alabe. It's the system. If you all look at Chris Olave's film in Ohio State, a lot of things that Chris Olave was doing, he was getting behind defenses untouched. Like he was unaccounted for. Like there was a lot of scheme that went into Chris Olave getting open. Or I'm not going to slice and say a lot, but there was plenty of scheme that went into Ohio State's offense.
It definitely was a lot. A lot of them crossing routes and patterns. That's why when you hear that 4.3 speed or 4.2 during the combine, you don't see that on the field. Like you don't see him running no fly routes. Like you don't see that. So I mean, you can touch on it more, Mual, but yeah, it's a lot of schematic things that happen that get them boys open on a regular basis.
Yeah, so and at least people understand that AJ understands that he's getting schemed open, and that's one thing, right? So clearly you're going to see that man burning people deep, and it is what it is. Shout out to Ohio State because they're doing things at an elite level on that side of the ball. But at the same time, while he's doing that, he understands his route running is fine. I think it's really good. He's smart. He understands the techniques that's being played against him, so he can kind of manipulate defenders, play little games with them, and things like that. So that's when people say he's smooth in his route running. I understand that, and I agree. Although we need to find a new term with smooth because everybody uses the word smooth with Chris Olave, like be different, including myself, right? Because I just use it. But another thing that I'll separate between the 3 and 5 and the top 3 is the play strength. Again, Jahan Dotson gets pressed beyond belief. I've seen clips and I've shared clips. I haven't shared it publicly. I shared it to evaluators and some of my friends. Jahan Dotson getting pressed off the field. I'm not lying to you. Like he's getting jammed at the line of scrimmage, and next thing you know, he's in the sideline, damn near to the first row of seats. Like it's that bad in terms of his press, his ability to beat the press at times, and it's one of the reasons why he's gotten pressed the most in college football this last year, if not his whole entire career. He gets pressed a lot because he has issues beating the press. Same thing with Chris Olave. His play strength is questionable. I think it's minimal. I don't think it's that good at all. But again, you have to deal with the strengths and things like that, and his play strengths, and things like that. And that's probably what dragged him down the most part is his play strength. If he was a little bit stronger and he's a little bit more competitive and he had better yak ability in terms of being able to try to score after he gets the ball, I would trust him a little bit more. But that's the reason why I have him 5th versus in that first tier with Wilson, Williams, and London. So that's my top 5. I don't know if you all had to react to it. I know Alex asked us in the chat if we're going to put that Twitter Spaces conversation on YouTube with Mark Bullock. I can look into it, and I think it's not dead because it's a standstill conversation up until Thursday. So I can try to figure out if we can do it. I'm sure there's a way. But Alex, if there's a way, give me tomorrow, and it'll be up on YouTube. Tyrone checked in with us, fellas. He said, Deshaun Jackson and Terry, we already got receivers. Hey, Tyrone, I'm not going to lie to you, buddy. We need
Deshaun Jackson been gone about 6 years, brother.
Hey, man.
Hey, appreciate you checking in, though, for real. But nah, Deshaun ain't it at all.
Yeah. I mean, I just feel like everything you said is true, and I think a lot of these fans, especially when they're doing their mock drafts or players that they want, they're not taking in accountability, like in college, you don't really see too much press man action. In the NFL, you're gonna see that a lot, especially if they know that's where it's hard for you to, get off the ball. Like it's different. It's different when you have that foot speed to be able to get that quick release off the press man. And when you're a guy like a Jamison Williams, for example, like corners still going to try and press you, but it's not going to be that many times during a full game because once you get by them, it's murder she wrote. It's done. Yeah, it's done. Like
you got to show a person. That's to your point. You got to show it. They're going to do the same thing with Drake London. I get that. They're going to do the same. They're going to try to press that man too.
Yeah,
that's why you got to put Drake in the slot.
Yeah, so it's just like when Jamison Williams gets drafted by whoever he goes to, in his game one, the cornerbacks around the league or the cornerbacks that he's going to play that week one are going to know that he's fast. They know that. Like, they can easily go pull that man up on YouTube and see how fast he is. and they know that. They got to respect it automatically. But when you're a guy that you've been bullied in college in the press game and you're not even going against top-tier cornerbacks on a regular, just imagine what, what a Xavier Howard is going to do to you, or a James Bradbury, or Marshawn Lattimore. Like, those guys are going to bully you, and you're taking out the game completely. And now you just, if you're Washington, you just have Terry McLaurin to count on.
You gotta find ways to scheme him open. Put that man, hide that man. Put him in some bunches. Put him in some stack looks. I don't know, man. But to your point, AJ, though, you're right. Like, you got to try to hide him at that point, because if he ain't getting off the line in that game, it's current. You either bench him or you find a way to hide him and make him successful. Give him some bubble screens or something. I don't know. We'll figure that out. But ladies and gentlemen, joining us right now is Mitch Tischler. The good man Mitch works for NBC Sports Washington, covering the Commanders, and is 1/3 of the Washington Football Talk podcast. If you aren't listening to them boys, make sure you listen. You are missing out. Mitch, man, I appreciate you joining us tonight, my man. How you feeling?
Thanks for having me. Feeling good. How about you boys?
Hey, I can't complain, man. We talking a little receiver. I don't think that's ever going to stop, especially for you and all of us, but I don't think that's ever going to stop until that number 11 pick is here, man. So we're in the midst of
2 days
talking
away.
Receivers. Yeah, a couple days away. So let me ask you one quick thing before we get into the actual draft talk. You've been with the Commanders for a while now. I've been following the podcast, I think 2018, I think, is when I was around. But I come to know you. I'm about to say I come to know you at that point that you've been working around the team for some time. In terms of draft moments, if you had to list any top moments in your memory since you've been covering the team, what are some memories that stands out to you? Whether it's a moment with a person or actual situation or instance that you were actually experiencing through the pre-draft process.
Yeah, the number one moment's pretty easy. It's when RG3 was drafted. The second that the then Redskins had made the trade up to number 2, we flew out to Waco. We spent some time in his hometown with his high school coaches, with his family, with Art Briles over at Baylor as college coaches. So we've been kind of embedded with him for about a week or two. And that draft night, he got on stage. He got out of the limo. He got on stage and kind of lifted his sock at me and showed me the "Go Catch Your Dreams" the socks that he was wearing that night. And then once he was picked, we flew back to DC with him and spent that night. So I mean, that day was just so damn cool because you kind of know Robert, you kind of know his family a little bit, and got to see some, the real emotion of when the moment actually happened on stage, but also so many of those backstage moments and, kind of times that he had a couple minutes to himself and you could see him just kind of being like, damn, I made it. Like, this is cool. And so for me, that I got a little bit of goosebumps now. For me, that's always a moment that sticks out as something incredibly cool that I got to see.
That's good, man. Like, I know you run into a ton of situations like that. And that's not necessarily on that level, but just running into those instances where, you have those access to the prospects. And I know recently you all talking to Kobe Dean. And I don't have the visual, but I would assume it's on Zoom or something like that. But even still, like when you have those moments pre-COVID where you're able to, sit down and talk with people or even go visit or whatever it is. I remember one instance specifically with you. I think you were in LA. in a pre-draft process, I think at one point just spectating somebody. I don't remember what it was, but you were in LA at one moment spectating somebody.
Oh, with Dwayne Haskins.
Prospect. Oh, so that was all right. So that's I was about to say, I know you were spectating somebody. So you were in LA at one moment. So you have these moments. So it was just interesting to see, what stood out off the top of your head in these things. But when we talk about Washington, there's quite a few question marks heading into the draft, but not that many draft picks to resolve them. At this point, we're looking at 6 draft picks. What do you make of the current state of Washington heading into this weekend? The current state being everything on the football side. I'll give the floor to you to take it however which way you want to take it.
Yeah. I think the team's got to feel pretty good about themselves. I know they want more draft picks, and I expect them to try and maneuver that. I don't think they're going to maneuver around number 11, but they're gonna plant their flag on the Carson Wentz deal in the offseason and how much better that offense can be. You saw it take a big step last year. From basically bottom 2 or 3 2 years ago to right around 20 last year with Taylor Heineke at quarterback. I would hope everybody recognizes that Carson Wentz is a huge upgrade over Taylor Heineke, just in some of the things that he can do, throw the ball from sideline to sideline, be on time and get the ball out quickly, in the 3-step drops, and then obviously the deep balls downfield. So I think this team's excited about the fact that they're going to have, not arguably, the best quarterback they've had since Kirk Cousins left, and they're going to be able to do some things on offense. And I think that's going to kind of shape a little bit of their draft strategy here. I expect that they're going to go receiver at 11. I know you guys were just talking about that a lot, but I think that they're under the impression, or they're going to try and start working, on an offense that can get a lead. For years, we've seen this, then Redskins, Washington football team, now Commanders. We've seen this team fall behind early in games consistently, not be able to score opening drive touchdowns, not be able to score opening drive field goals, go 3 and out quickly, not be able to get first half leads. And I think that, some of the struggles on defense can be equated to that, because if you're never able to play with the lead, your stud defensive ends are never able to put their hand in the dirt, knowing that pin their ears back, get after the quarterback. I mean, that's daunting for a defense to always be playing on their heels, and it creates, bad situations. So I think they want to address that a little bit. I think they're excited about, the offensive side of the ball, obviously what they have with Terry McLaurin. I expect that they're going to get a deal done with him. It might not be for another, almost 3 months now, but I think they're going to ultimately get a deal done with him. Hopefully Curtis Samuel's able to give you something. Antonio Gibson is a guy who has, breakout speed. We saw him his senior year of college. He had 3 70-plus yard touchdowns. We've seen a couple big plays out of him. But I think they're looking for a couple more weapons. I think they're looking for an opportunity to be able to beat teams down the field. And that comes from having, a quarterback like Carson Wentz that can deliver the ball there, but also forcing teams to cover receivers other than Terry McLaurin. And that's why I think at 11, they're going to end up with a receiver, probably Drake London. If for some reason, something crazy happens and Garrett Wilson drops, I think he's their number 1 receiver on the board. But I think Drake London's the most reasonable pick there at 11, and I expect them to be excited about bringing him in.
So Mitch, I wanted to jump in real quick with you, alluding to adding weaponry for Carson Wentz in this passing game attack. Why do you think Drake London would be a complementary piece to the passing game, especially when one of the main questions in regards to Drake London's game is his lack of speed?
Because I think Terry's your deep guy in that situation. I think you have De'Ami Brown's speed also in those 4 receiver sets, and there's a lot of excitement about Curtis Samuel over there. I know those coaches are excited about his speed as well. I think the biggest thing about Drake London, he's a big body, he can go up and catch the ball, and one of those things that I think translates very well from college to pros is those guys that have the good contested catch rate. We saw that with Terry McLaurin, and I think Drake London is a guy who made the USC quarterbacks look better than they were last year, because there were times that this dude was running wide open and they're just underthrowing him and not giving him an opportunity to catch the ball and make plays. And I think that having a guy with dependable hands that can go up and beat a smaller DB is an important part of an offense. And I think you can look a little bit like Pierre Garçon and Deshaun Jackson back in the day. I don't think that, Terry is quite there yet. And I don't think Drake London is Pierre by any means, but that sort of complementary situation where you have a guy that can be your possession receiver and guy who can make DBs have to commit extra guys and give Terry an opportunity to get open on the other side.
I wanted to ask you, Mitch, because you just brought up something interesting in saying that you believe that Garrett Wilson is the number one wide receiver on the Washington Commanders board, which is the first time I've heard that. I've heard Drake London. I've actually heard Chris Olave, but hearing Garrett Wilson is the first time. Is that something you've been kind of hearing? Because that's interesting, and that would make me happy.
It's something that I believe that to be the case. I'm not talking about any insider knowledge. I believe that to be the case. I think there hasn't been a lot of talk about Garrett Wilson because the chances of him dropping there to 11 are slim to none. I don't think he drops beyond 6, 7, 8. The Jets certainly at 10 I think would jump at him. The name that you brought up, Chris Olave, is a guy who I am not very high on, and I would not like to see in the burgundy and gold for a lot of the same reasons, a lot of the opposite reasons, as we talked about Drake London. Olave is a guy who doesn't do much with the ball after he catches it. He doesn't have a good contested catch rate. And, when I look at college receivers, and this is, just kind of my opinion, I think that when you play at an elite school, there's a lot of opportunities to get open, especially when the receiver on the other side of the ball is Garrett Wilson. To me, when your number two guy in Chris Olave is not able to do much, when teams are able to clamp down on him, makes me worried about what's going to happen when he gets to the pros. There are only so many Jamar Chases out there. You don't see a lot of rookies out there just dusting DBs earlier in their careers, and I think that's something that Chris Olave did a great job of at Ohio State, and certainly it's something that he might be able to do as his NFL career goes on. I just don't think it's something that's going to happen right away, and I think Washington needs to get a difference maker right away at 11 on the offensive side. So that's why I'm high on London. That's why I'm a little lower on Olave.
Well, for what it's worth, the conversation that you walked in on was literally us talking about why Olave, at least for me and AJ, weren't necessarily on the high end of our board. I had him at number 5, but the number 4 and 5 receiver on my board were separate than the first 3 in Jameson, Garrett Wilson, and obviously Drake London.
Here, let me read you the stat real quick about Olave that kind of shaped a lot of my reasoning. Olave ranked 152 out of 202 qualified receivers in yards per reception last year, and 200 out of 202 in missed tackle force percentage rate. That's the type of thing that leads me to believe that he's a dude who excels when he's able to get wide open, but isn't able to necessarily do a lot when DBs are draped on him. And I just don't think there's a ton of rookie wide receivers that are able to go out there and get wide open like he was running in college. So for me, that's my worry about Olave.
And what's crazy, real quick to add, Alabe might have been the 3rd number wide receiver on that team when you also factor in Smith and Nigba, however you say his last name, if you think about that. So
he might be the number 1 receiver next year.
Next year, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. And you got Marvin Harrison Jr. playing alongside him at Ohio State. They're just a wide receiver factory at this point.
Yeah. And to add to Mitch's stat, the film side of it, when you hear something like that and you're the one out there to say stats are one thing, but what does the film show? Well, guess what? When you see Olave catch the ball, pay attention to what he does after. He's not one who looks for holes or tries to manipulate his offensive blockers to get that extra yard. He's looking for the out of bounds marker. He's trying to get out of bounds or he's sliding down. He's not necessarily looking to get any yards after catch. He just wants to go down. So you got to keep that in mind too. Like those stats in the film, they match. There's no misconception there. It's a reason why he ranks that low. And that is what it is.
Hold on. Can I just give one Chris Olave comparison for me? I mean, some of you all may not recognize this comparison. Mitch probably will. AJ may. But to me, he's 1994 Henry Ellert. He doesn't, like you say, he doesn't make plays. He's a guy who's going to get open. If he gets open, he might catch. He's an obsession guy. You're a little too young for that, Jamal. I don't even know if you were born when Henry Ellert was playing for the Washington Redskins.
I was one, bro. I was one, man.
But he was a route running technician. He would get open, but you just didn't expect much after the catch. He was just a guy, if he got open, but he wasn't what he used to be. So that's Chris Olave for me.
A more modern one could be Jameson Crowder. I think that Crowder's a good player, a good receiver. Do I want him at the 11th pick in the draft? Probably not. I think Olave is a good receiver. All this Olave hate isn't that he's going to be a total bust. I just don't. I don't think he belongs in the upper half of the first round, and honestly, in the top 5 or so of the wide receivers, because I think it's a super strong receiver class this year.
And before we move on to the next one, just a reminder, Mitch, you're not hating. You're bringing your analysis to the table, and it's not a positive light for people who are in favor of Alabe. You're not. It's no hate. It's no hate on our end. You know, it is what it is. That's all. That's all we got for him. So the next thing, before we circle back to the actual draft board and things like that, news has come out today through the Athletic that Washington is not expected to offer Daron Payne a contract extension. So essentially putting Payne 1 foot closer to free agency when his time ends in 2022. We know that Washington was not able to, or they would not be able to keep their touted, quote unquote, touted defensive line together forever. But what is that update in terms of, his contract status and Washington's belief on the extension or anything? What does that update confirm in your mind, whichever that may be? Where do you lean towards that, Mitch?
I say this in the most respectful way, but you can't pay John Allen what you paid him. Know that you have contracts coming up for Montez Sweat and then Chase Young potentially. You can't pay everybody. We've been saying that for a while, and I think that's part of the problem when you draft so many guys at the same general position. 4 or 5 years in a row. And I don't think they're going to trade. I know that there's talk that they want to move him and that they're going to try to, but you look at the state of that defensive line room if they get rid of Daron Payne, and it's John Allen and a bunch of Jags. And that's no disrespect to the rest of the guys there, but nobody that's proven anything in the NFL. And ultimately, if he walks at the end of the year, you're going to end up with probably a third-round compensatory pick for him, which is about what you might get for him this year. And so I don't know that you want to, depreciate your defensive line room that much by getting rid of him. I know that there's going to be talk. I know he's going to be somebody that teams are going after, unless somebody comes up with a second rounder for him or something, make 2/3, which again would be shocking. I don't know that they're going to move him because ultimately they're going to end up with a third back for him, and they kind of need his production in the middle of that defense this year, especially letting Tim Settle and Matt Ioannidis go. So it's been an interesting offseason for that defensive line. I know that there's been some friction there between the coaching staff and the D-line a little bit, and I think we're starting to see a little bit of the some of the changes that I think Jack Del Rio and Ron Rivera think they need to make to be successful on the defensive side of the ball. I don't think you can get rid of Daron Payne. I just think that he's too valuable this year, and you're going to get about the same draft capital back for him by letting him walk in a compensatory pick in 2 years.
So, fellas, hold on 1 second, AJ, because this is the conversation. We're going to have this conversation and then transition to the mock draft side. But yes, Mitch, to your point, and AJ, I'll let you go next. This is the thing with the conversation of Daron Payne. Like, you broke down everything to a T. Like it ain't much you can do. Like you knew that these guys were they weren't going to stay together forever. But when you transition to the coaching side of things, I personally felt like, and I want everybody's thoughts on this. I personally felt like there was a lack of foresight with the offense. With the office, this office or this coaching staff. I don't know why I thought about offense, but coaching staff. And I think one of the things that kind of hinders these guys in certain situations. Now, granted, Daron Payne signed his 5th year, or they exercised the 5th year option prior to the start of the 2021 season. So that kind of puts things where they are in that regard. But when you talk about the plan of quarterback and what you wanted to do with the quarterback position, Carson Wentz's deal, though you needed a quarterback, I don't think anything else after that was a actual thought out plan once they acquired Carson Wentz. So you're getting your guy, then you let Eric Flowers go. Even if you wanted to keep Brandon Sheriff, I mean, that is what it is. You let him go because he's going to ask for a lot, and he probably isn't going to want to re-sign here anyway. But then you let Tim Settle, and then you have to cut Ioannidis. You let Tim Settle walk, have to cut Ioannidis because you have to make room for Carson Wentz. After you told Ioannidis in March that you were safe, you don't have much to worry about here. And then you have to change your mind. You end up having to let Landon Collins go because of the fact that the number that he agreed to restructure on isn't enough now because you got Carson Wentz. And then back to the other part of the D-line, while you're not able to keep all 5 or however many first-round picks are on the defensive line, you still have no intention on extending him as of now in terms of Daron Payne, and it's all a byproduct of, the plan, which was Carson Wentz. I don't necessarily know, fellas, that this was one of the smartest things, because if you knew better before this offseason started, you would have been looking to try and trade some guys to get some value up off some of these people that you probably weren't expecting to keep in the long run, especially if you were going to go after a veteran quarterback this free agency.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Daron Payne situations, and I guess it was Ben Standing that put out this article today, right?
Yes.
I feel like even putting out the article was so unnecessary because at the end of the day, his 5th-year option was picked up last year, right? So anyone that's on a 1-year deal could possibly not get extended next year with the Commanders. But it's almost as if like a narrative is trying to be pushed out there to possibly like cause some drama, because I know Daron Payne's agent. Joe Siegel is not. He's not out here playing these media games and trying to get his client traded through the public story pushing. Like, it's just not something that's going to happen. But I just feel like there's still opportunity for Daron Payne to get extended here. You're not paying a quarterback, so we don't know the future of Carson Wentz. We don't know if he's going to ball out enough to get a new deal next year. So if they're in a situation where they're going to move on from Wentz next year, they're probably not going to be able to go after a big-time quarterback once again as far as like free agency or trade. They're going to have to end up drafting a quarterback, and you're still not paying a top premium player on your roster. So you could actually still keep Daron Payne and Jonathan Allen, because eventually you also are going to have to extend Montez Sweat and possibly Chase Young. That's the whole purpose of hitting on these first-round picks. You want to be able to keep those guys within the fold. I just think that maybe the little sideline antics that happen between them doesn't help with this conversation, and maybe that's why it may have been pushed up in April versus training camp time. But I just don't see it as a topic that really even needs to be discussed. They're not going to move on from Daron Payne, and if they do and end up creating a bigger hole for themselves, it would look stupid, because that was the one position that you actually had depth at. Like, now you have no Tim Settle that you could have re-signed. Even after the Wentz deal, you still could have attempted to keep him in the fold because you wanted to, and he wanted to stay here. He's from here. He didn't really want to leave to go to Buffalo. Nobody really wants to leave to go to Buffalo. He's still going to be a situational player in Buffalo. Then you tell Matt Ioannidis that you're keeping him. Then you have that whole PR nightmare where the agent is like, you guys said this and you did completely opposite. It just doesn't make sense to now say, hey, we're just going to try and get some value for Daron Payne, especially when a compensatory pick is going to be the 3rd round. Like, you're not going to get a 2nd round pick for Daron Payne, and the team also willing to give him a new deal as well. That's not happening.
AJ, listen, I agree with you about it not making sense for Daron. I just said as much, but there's no media narrative being driven here by pointing out that they're not expecting to extend him long term. I mean, earlier this offseason at the Combine, Martin Mayhew said that was one of their top priorities. So the fact that in the month and a half since the month or so since the Combine, that's changed as much in the Commanders' front office mind is pretty noteworthy and certainly worthy of a story. And let's be honest, I mean, this story is coming out today, the week of the draft, because they're hoping to drum up a little interest around the draft and get something, done before Thursday or on Thursday or Friday or whatever it may be. But if no deal gets done, it's certainly super noteworthy that one of your first round pick from 2018 is all of a sudden not going to be, a member of this team, next year.
Well, I guess for me, the part is you also, even though it's a business, but you also have to understand that player. Daron is a very quiet individual and stays to himself. He's very low key. So now, if you can't possibly move this guy, if that's what your intentions are, you now have to deal with that individual and their personality for the remainder of the season, which could create turmoil within your locker room. That's the dangers of playing this type of game. Like, you could really mess up your locker room big time.
But why would Daron Payne do that in what could possibly be his last year here when he has to audition for somewhere else where he has to get a deal? You would think, regardless of, even if Daron Payne is this petty individual who holds on to grudges, he realizes that he has to get paid after the Washington Commanders tenure that he has. So he has to put on some kind of display of real football, like whether he hates everyone in the locker room or not. This is his career we're talking about. We're not talking about, Daron. We're not just talking about the Washington Commanders season here. We're talking about Daron Payne's career. This, whatever happens after this hinges on what he does this upcoming season. If he puts on a mediocre display because he's throwing temper tantrums in the locker room and all of that, then that's on Daron, and teams are going to treat him accordingly, and no one's going to be pressed to go out there and get him. So I think he still has an obligation to himself to perform, and obligation to his teammates to perform and do something, because he has a future that he's playing for.
Yeah, and as AJ said, Daron is a quiet, keep to yourself guy. I don't expect that he'd be somebody that would turn into a problem in the locker room. And we all saw publicly the punch, the fight, whatever you want to call it, in Dallas. That was super out of character for both Daron and John. Neither of those two guys are guys that are up in your face, dudes that are gonna start sideline fights. So I don't expect to see anything along those lines if they're not able to get a deal done.
I was muted on the wrong side. Okay. All right. I like that conversation, fellas. But let's go ahead and transition right quick. Let's get this mock draft out the way. Mitch, as we get ready for the mock draft, man, let's get your plan A strategy for the first two rounds. Plan A and plan B. I was going to do 3 and plan C, but let's get your plan A and plan B. What would be your plan A and plan B strategy for the first 2 rounds? Let's hear it, and I'll go ahead and pull up the mock draft simulator from, what is this, Pro Football Focus, and you'll have the first stab at the 3-round mock draft.
Are you going to run the first inning? You want me to just go through what I think?
No, go ahead. Yeah, you go ahead. I'm about to pull it up on my side. You go ahead.
All right. I guess we already talked about the first round. I'm going Drake London. I think he's the pick there. That's who I want to see. If for some reason he's gone, I don't expect that Derek Stingley will be there, so I'd go Kyle Hamilton, possibly second. But the one thing I'd throw out there just to have folks in the back of their mind, there are kind of 3 big offensive tackles there. There's Evan Neal, the kid from Alabama. There's Charlie Cross from Mississippi State, and what's the kid from NC State? Ekwonu. I think those. If one of those 3 guys happens to drop to 11, and Drake is also there, there might be some conversation about whether they go O-line versus wide receiver there, which I wouldn't be, as much as I love the O-line and know how important all that stuff is, I don't think that that's the right move there. But to have an opportunity to draft, you kind of have potentially pick up some bookend tackles in back-to-back years and create a situation, where you can be set up for a couple of years on the O-line. I could see the team, the coaching staff, front office being excited about doing something like that. As you start looking at the second round, I mean, it's silly to say because obviously everyone thinks that way, but you want to go kind of best player available, and whether that's linebacker like Boye Mafe from Minnesota, or if they don't go receiver round 1, kind of be interesting to see who the guys are, whether Christian Watson or Sky Moore ends up dropping there too. But I think either way, in rounds 1 or 2, they have to take a receiver. I think it's something that needs to happen. I think you got to support Carson Wentz. You made the big deal to go get him. You're paying him a ton of money. Go get him some weapon. Go get him another weapon.
All right, so here we go. Mitch, man, you tell me what to do. You are in control. I'm going to go ahead and start it. We have two top 100 picks right now, the pick 11th and pick 47. If you want to make trades, you can. I'm going to go ahead and start the draft right now, and we'll go from here. So we're starting right now, and we have Washington on the clock. The recent picks that we had is Kyle Hamilton at number 8 to the Atlanta Falcons, Garrett Wilson, number 10 to the New York Jets. So here you go. You are on the clock, Dakota. Please relax because I will kick you out I have to finish this podcast. Fellas, Mitch, you are on the clock. Who you got? Well, let me go ahead and run through this. You have Jamison Williams in turn your top 5. Jamison Williams, George Karlaftis, edge out of Purdue, Trent McDuffie, cornerback out of Washington, Drake London, wide receiver out of USC, and your 5th one is Devin Lloyd, linebacker out of Utah. Where you going?
So I know there's a lot of excitement about Jamison Williams, and he looks better coming back from the ACL than people expected, and should be ready for the start of the season. Pre-injury, I thought he was the number 1 receiver in this draft. I mean, I think he's going to be an absolute stud in the NFL. I just don't think Washington's in a position where they can take him. They need somebody who can impact right away. And as much as we're seeing all this good talk about Jamison Williams, I'm concerned that it might not be quite as rosy as it looks. And this coaching staff can't afford to blow another round 1 pick. I mean, what happened last year with Jamin Davis, it can't happen again, because at some point they're going to have to draft a quarterback of the future. And if you've proven, multiple years in a row that you can't get your first round pick right, how can you trust that front office or that coaching staff to draft your QB of the future? So to me, I think they need to pick the best player that's safest. I've been saying it all podcasts, Drake London.
Boom. Drake London. My man, Mitch, you a smart guy. Drake London at 11. We are now moving on to the 47th pick, and I'll do the recent 5. At pick 47, you had David Ojabo, edge rusher out of Michigan. Desmond Ridder, quarterback out of Cincinnati, went to the Falcons. Johan Dotson, Penn State, went to the Cleveland Browns. Quay Walker, linebacker out of Georgia, went to the Baltimore Ravens. And Drake Jackson, edge rusher, USC, went to the Minnesota Vikings. Your top 5 that's on the board, Mitch. You got Jalen Petrie, Leo Chanel, Nick Bonito, Jaquan Brisker, and Josh Pascal. If you need me to scroll through or try to look through some trades, let me know. You are on the clock, my man.
I mean, I certainly would be looking. I think the team is going to be looking to draft to trade back from there. But Jalen Petrie being on the board at 47, I'd be damn excited about adding him to the mix. I think this is a team that needs a little bit more depth at corner, and there's a lot of spots where they might be able to build that. And I think if Petrie's there at 47, I'd be excited about adding him to this defense. So I might just stick there and take Jalen Petrie.
Boom. Okay. No trades. We got Drake London and Jalen Petrie. Okay. How do we end this? We ain't got to go through all these damn picks. Oh Lord. Okay. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and do the next thing. Dre, you're gonna be on the clock. AJ, you up next. I will go last. My man Mitch had an A- draft. Okay, let me download this image. We are gonna post that thing tomorrow. Download that right now. Boom. Okay. Now we got a new one coming up. Dre, you are up next. Number 11. Let's go ahead and do this 3-round mock draft. We have no rules. We did the rules for the last one. You can do whatever you want. So Mitch, I had this last time because we knew we was going to go receiver in the first round. I told us that we couldn't select a receiver in the first round just to see how we can maneuver in our mock drafts. But this one, we have no rules. We're going to go ahead and start this one up. Dre, you are on the board.
Well, close to draft time. I'm with Mitch on this. I am going Drake. No. I'm sorry.
I'm about to say, I know you see it.
No, I didn't see it. I didn't see it. Garrett Wilson's right there on the board. That's where I'm going. I would normally trade down, but those are my 2 guys. I'm going Garrett Wilson of the 2. That's my draft pick.
Real quick, you went through.
Breaks quick as hell.
That was quick. I wasn't even expecting Garrett Wilson to be sitting there, so I wasn't even thinking about him.
Yeah,
look at that.
Evan Neal's sitting there too, but I don't want an offensive lineman.
Evan Neal. Charles Cross went off the board at 7. Kyle Hamilton went off the board at 9. Jameson went a pick before Washington, so that left Drake London, Garrett Wilson, and Evan Neal, like he mentioned, tackle out of Alabama, Devin Lloyd, and I think that was it really in terms of our needs. But yeah, let me go ahead and get Garrett Wilson, and we'll move over to the 47th pick in the draft. Let's see if you get lucky again, man.
Let's see, man. That's what we're
all
here
right.
For. All right.
So here you go.
Trade down for me. See if we can stay in the second round. I want to see a trade down option for the second round.
Okay.
Yeah, give me that Saints pick. Yeah, I'll
Saints
take
49.
that.
Okay.
Yeah, 49 and what's that? 98. Yeah, give me 98 too.
You want 98 too? Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
they can take that. They can take that right there.
Give him the
that 47. Yeah.
All right. You want to take that first chance off for this one?
Yeah, we'll offer
All right,
that.
let's see what you got. All right, boom, you got it.
Yeah, we
All
accept
right, bet. Let's go ahead and resume this draft then. Trade back. Let's see who you got.
Yeah.
Okay.
So at this point, is Chad Mumo on the board? Is he available?
Let me see if I can search his name.
Okay, it looks like he's been drafted already. Someone got him.
Right there.
Oh yeah, but you know what? Let me go. Not him. I want the other linebacker that was at the top of the board. Chenal.
Yeah,
Chenal. Yes. Give me Wisconsin boy.
Boom. Draft.
I think that's the end of my draft, and maybe 98 is the fourth round.
Yeah, 98 is third.
Okay, all right. Look, yeah. See, here we go.
Got one more.
Yeah. At this point, I mean, I love Carson Strong.
Brian Cook. I don't know who the hell Kellen Dish is, or Dominique Robinson, or Kyle Phillips. I don't know, but they're your top 5.
Give me, because look, if Cornelius Lucas didn't sign back as a swing tackle, I would have went Deer Arizona State. But I'm going to go with Carson Strong because I believe you need your strong backup there. Carson Strong.
Okay. All right, let's see what we got. Grading the draft. Let me go ahead down. Oh, solid A.
Solid A. That's what I do.
Garrett Wilson,
produce A's.
Carson Strong. Okay, let me go ahead and download this thing. As always, put it out tomorrow. AJ.
Well, one thing about I like when you were talking Muma. Chenal is like 19 is a 2005 middle linebacker. Not a whole lot of wiggle to his hips. Not a whole lot of ability to cover tight ends. Yeah. That guy might be. He's a goal line linebacker.
You're right about that.
Hey, he can ball though. I like how you play.
Yeah, listen, he's strong as an ox in the middle there. I mean, he went to Wisconsin. He was probably flipping Bay.
Like Mitch say, he's a throwback. He is a throwback player. Ron Rivera loves throwback players. He might remind Ron of himself.
Now, AJ has an interesting dilemma on his hands right now. So let me go ahead and play it out for everybody.
No, he doesn't. He's going to pick Jameson.
Exactly.
Listen, we know who he's going to pick, but we got to lay out who's on the board. You got Derek Stingley, who just got picked to the Falcons, Trent McDuffie, and Kyle Hamilton, 8, 9, and 10. On the board for Washington at this point for AJ, you have Jamison Williams, wide receiver, Drake London, wide receiver, and Garrett Wilson, wide receiver. Garrett Wilson is coming into the 2022 draft with no injuries. Drake London has an injury with an ankle. And Jameson is injury with an ACL. Who is AJ going with on the board with those 3 available to him? Who you got?
Hey, man, my wide receiver 1 has always been Jamison Williams. Going with that. Add him into the mix with Diami Brown, Curtis Samuel, Terry McLaurin, Antonio Gibson, and J.D. McKissick. That offense sounds a bit NASCAR-like to me. Talking speed. And it allows Wentz to, utilize his best throw in his repertoire, which is deep ball.
All right, so look. We are at pick 47. AJ just selected Jamison Williams at pick 11 for the Washington Commanders. Off the board, the recent picks, you have Jalen Petrie going to the Atlanta Falcons at 43, Nick Benito at 44 to the Cleveland Browns, Drake Jackson, edge rusher, USC, 45 to the Ravens, and then Johan Dotson to the Vikings, 46 out of Penn State. Your top 4 is Leo Chenal, Jaquan Brisker, Desmond Ridder, Josh Pascal. Who do you have at pick 47, AJ?
So there's some interesting prospects available. I just mentioned that I like Leo Chenal, how he plays, but, as Mitch even mentioned, he's a very old school middle linebacker. He's not going to be your sideline to sideline type of guy, but when he sees ball, he goes and gets ball. With Jaquan Brisker, he's someone that I can play in that Buffalo nickel, that hybrid down there, kind of replace Landon Collins. And then Desmond Ridder, quarterback option. I'm not too high on him. I think he could be a solid backup in the NFL, but with the inaccuracies that he has, there's no fixing that, in my opinion. Definitely has an arm on him, but I just think he's too inaccurate for me. I will go with Jaquan Brisker with my 47th pick in the draft.
47th, Jaquan Brisker is selected. So we have Jamison Williams and Jaquan Brisker in AJ's mock, 3-round mock. I'll go ahead and download this and put that thing out tomorrow.
I got an A-. See?
A- was the result. That is a pretty solid draft, man. So I got the last say on this thing. Number 11, let me enter the draft. Let me go ahead and start the draft. Please be there. Okay. Y'all know where I'm going, man. Oh, wait. Oh, Lord. Damn.
you don't even know where you're going.
Nah, I'm gonna stick to my board. For those who don't know,
Jameson
or those
number
who
one
missed
for you.
out, yeah, about to say Jameson is number 1 for me. But you all know who I you know what I'm saying? I love who I love, but Jameson is number 1 on my board. For those who don't know, and those who are listening, Kyle Hamilton went at number 8, Charles Cross number 9 to Seattle, Trey McDuffie number 10 to the New York Jets. I have Jamison Williams, Drake London, and Garrett Wilson on the board. I have to go with my number 1. He is available, although I would have loved to get Drake London. I'm going to go Jamison Williams.
Real quick, is Malik Willis on the board right there?
Oh, Lord, that was actually a good question. Let's see. Malik Willis, he actually got selected 2 spots behind me, number 13 to the Houston Texans. So, and then Garrett Wilson went number 12, right behind.
So, Mitch, are you saying you would pick Malik Willis
question.
if he's on the board for you, Mitch?
If I was the GM of the Washington Commanders, yes, I would. Okay. I don't have much belief, big picture, in what Carson Wentz is going to do for you. I think that he's a huge upgrade over Taylor Heineke and a good quarterback. I just don't think he's a franchise guy and a guy that's going to win you real meaningful football games. And by meaningful football games, I mean playoff games. And so while I like him in the short term next year for this team, I don't think he's the future. And I wouldn't be against, hedging my bet right away because I think Malik Willis is going to be a star. I think it might take a year of sitting and then a year of playing before he really breaks out. So you might have to, have a front office and a coaching staff that's patient. But I think by his 3rd year, he's going to be a absolute stud in this league and somebody who can light it up. And I think Washington's been looking for that quarterback for, 25 years. And as much as Carson Wentz is a nice piece, I don't think he's that. And so I'd still be searching for that piece at any opportunity I get.
Hey, Mitch, I know we're trying to get you out of here real soon, but the fact that you bring up Malik Willis' question, if he doesn't go in the first round at all, do you now, with your 2nd round pick, try to move up to go get Malik Willis?
Yeah, sure. Yes, I think there's a less than 3% chance that he doesn't go in the first round. The biggest reasoning being, like you saw with the Ravens when they moved up to go get Lamar Jackson, you need to draft that quarterback in the first round so you can offer that 5th-year option. So you can add on that, so you can use that 5th-year option on the guy and keep him for 5 years. And especially for a guy like Malik Willis, who we believe is going to have to sit for probably a year, then you, for that reason and more, that's why you need to take him in the first round. Somebody's going to take him. I don't know that I believe he's going to even be there at 11 when Washington picks. I know that, people who are much smarter than me and much more plugged in with me across the league disagree. I think he's a hot commodity and someone's gonna snag him.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you.
So for my last pick, for reasons that AJ already listed, I was contemplating between Troy Anderson, Montana State linebacker, and Jaquan Brisker, but I figure if we're going to emphasize that Buffalo nickel roll 1,001 times with this damn team, I'm going to go ahead and outline and draft Jaquan Brisker, safety out of Penn State, and leave it at that. So I have Jameson and Jaquan Brisker. And it's unfortunate because
just say you wanted to be like me. Just say.
I'm about to say it's unfortunate because there are 2 people who have the same damn draft in this mock draft. So maybe I just leave out. I put 3 up there, and me and AJ are on the same team with this one. So I'm not even going to I'll do it. Whatever. I'll download it just for the sake of it.
I'm glad I made a trade down. I'm the only one that made a trade down.
Yeah, you are the only.
Listen, you're closest to what they're thinking, but on draft day, They're not getting a second and a third to move down. The Saints aren't giving up a third to move up 2 spots.
Yeah. So, fellas, because I do have a hard out, I do appreciate Mitch for joining us, and I will give you the floor. The floor is yours. Plug talk. Let everybody know where they can find you, what you got going on. The floor is yours, Mitch. Appreciate you for joining us.
Oh, you hit it on the way in. Instagram, Twitter at Mitch_Tischler. Listen to the Washington Football Talk pod. We have a ton of great stuff coming this week. We're going to have cameras out at FedEx Field at the fan party, getting live fan reactions to the Commanders' first round pick. We'll have a one-on-one with that pick. JP Finley will have that interview. We'll have podcasts Thursday, Friday, Saturday night, reacting to everything. So check us out.
Absolutely, man. Keep up the great work over there. I am a fan of the podcast, man. You all have that thoughtful, that critical analysis that people need in their life, right? Whether they're for or against your takes, man, it's needed. So keep up the good work over there. Fellas, we will be back on Thursday at FedEx Field Live. For those who are checking in or listening, we will be live again this week. So be sure to tune in on YouTube and Twitch for that. So fellas, I'm out of here. Y'all enjoy y'all evening. Y'all enjoy y'all day whenever you are listening. Be safe. We gone. Peace.
I appreciate you, Mitch.